Would you shave your head for $25 million? Of course you would. I'd do it for like 25 cents. We're trying to put a deck in the backyard. Wood is outrageously expensive right now. But hey, you know who wouldn't shave their head for $25 million? And that's right, Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that was his salary, and this is a bald cap. It's time to talk Arnold's turn as Mr. Freeze in the endlessly derided, pun-infested bane of the Batman franchise's existence. We're talking Batman and Robin. Hello friends, and welcome to the Season 3 premiere of Every Arnold Movie Ever. This is episode 26. And for the new year, hope you like my new camera setup with this fake depth of field. It's not that far, I can touch back there. But you can't really see all the Arnold memorabilia and of course my picture of me and Arnold. So if you don't like this setup, just let me know and I'll change it back. And then you can see everything back there. Now, if Season 1 covered his early rise to stardom, and Season 2 covered his explosion into becoming the highest paid movie star in the world, Season 3 is, well, as my dad says when he thinks something is bad but doesn't want to come right out and say it, it's interesting. It's the moment where Arnold's riskier choices don't pay off, and the studios start to view him as a bit of a liability. Now, in the past, the risks he took were a feature, not a bug, taking a role as the villain in The Terminator, sacrificing his salary to bet on himself in Twins, pulling Total Recall out of a 16-year development cycle, directing a TV movie about Christmas that was released
Monday, April 13th.
But towards the end of Season 2, there were signs that the momentum was lagging. Junior was an interesting gamble, but it started to push Arnold's persona into self-parody. Eraser was an enjoyable but mostly forgettable summer flick, and Jingle All the Way failed to garner much interest at all at the time. At this point, audiences were moving on from 80s action stars, and while Arnold was still commanding the largest salaries of his career, he would need to adapt in order to survive. So, he tried his hand at a comic book movie. In 1995, Arnold was shooting Eraser for Warner Brothers and still on top of the world. Actually, he was above it. The man bought a 747 for $147 million for crom's sake. So, Warner Brothers came to him with an offer. How would you like to be in the next Batman movie? Now, at this point, there were 3 movies in all were successful, but there was a sense that Batman Forever director Joel Schumacher was taking the series in a much different direction than Tim Burton. Forever was a lot lighter and campier, but it was able to catch the Jim Carrey wave at his absolute peak and ride that to box office success. However, with Batman and Robin, the studio exerted more control and mandated that not only the movie be released 2 years after Batman Forever, but more detrimentally, that Schumacher make the movie more toyetic.
Which means that what you create makes toys that can sell.
Because, if you can remember the toy line of the original Batman, they ran out of characters and variants pretty quickly, leading to toys such as Slalom Racer Batman, and even designed Mr. Freeze's blaster. This probably explains the overabundance of villains in the movie. That explains a lot about this movie, actually, except the nipples. Those are not on the toys. Of course, we can complain that toy companies having a say in the creative on movies is absolutely ridiculous. Yet at the same time, Transformers and G.I. Joe are literally products of toy companies that got turned into cartoons to sell the toys. So, I don't know. Everything's a product. Before Arnold, the character of Mr. Freeze was supposedly envisioned as more of a Shakespearean tragedy. The name Patrick Stewart is thrown around, and while Schumacher denies that, they were probably looking for a Patrick Stewart type if they couldn't get him. But there are conflicting stories as to how Arnold was cast. Was it Warner Brothers, who was making Eraser with him at the time? Was it Joel Schumacher, who tried to play to Arnold's ego and apply pressure?
This sounds very interesting. Let me think about it. And Joel then turned to me and said, I only can do this movie if you play Mr. Freeze. He made me feel like I would make this whole thing fall apart. So he made me feel like, you know, King Kong.
Or, like all the greatest Arnold roles, was it the interesting opportunity of playing a fascinating and tragic character, which would allow him to push his acting abilities even further than ever before? No, of course not. He got paid $25 million! That's about $1 million per day on set, and that's not the end of the math I'm going to be doing in this episode. Now, once Arnold was cast, they rewrote the role, obviously tailored to him. Less Shakespeare and more Schwartz pun. It's also his first role as a villain since The Terminator, which is one of the only interesting facts about this movie. And as soon as Arnold knew he was going to be in the movie, He called Jeff Dawn his longtime makeup artist. This guy is an Oscar winner from T2. He did the Frozen T1000 look using a can of probably toxic Christmas tree flocking. This time around, Dawn swapped out the poisonous flocking for acrylic paint, and Arnold also had to keep an LED light in his cheek to achieve the lighting effect in his mouth, except the lights were leaking battery acid straight into his mouth. But that's not all. Arnold was also outfitted in a giant armored suit.
I had to carry 58 pounds of armor with this freezing pack on my back that weighed an additional 25 pounds. I had twice the problem of George or Chris.
To which Chris O'Donnell had this to say in response: "That would be fine if, in return, we got paid half as much as he did." And that's a better line than anything he gets to say as Robin. Also this.
Literally, they had a double for him that was so good that unless Arnold was talking in a scene, he wasn't in that costume.
The final piece to the Mr. Freeze costume was his hairstyle. Originally, Arnold did agree to shave his head for the role after Jeff Dawn told him a bald cap would add an extra hour and 45 minutes to his time in the makeup chair. But on the day he was supposed to get it shaved, Arnold backed out. Jeff Dawn grabbed the hair trimmer anyway, and a showdown ensued.
I'm looking at Arnold. He's looking at me with this big shit grin smile like, Jeff, go ahead, I dare you.
And I turned it off and put the shaver back thinking, okay, I'm not going to go this route. I'm glad I didn't to this day. Production began in September of 1996, and according to John Glover, who is no stranger to superhero movies and TV shows, he was a great Lionel Luthor in Smallville, who had no problem shaving his head for the role. Joel Schumacher's biggest directorial contribution to this movie was to remind everyone.
Before a take, Joel would pick up his megaphone, his bullhorn, and go, "Remember, everybody, it's a cartoon."
The mark of a true artist. There's also stories about parades of celebrities visiting the set. John Bon Jovi stopped by and gave Arnold some Cuban cigars. And for further proof of Arnold and Bon Jovi's friendship, see Bon Jovi's awful video for the awful song Say It Isn't So, a song I didn't even know existed until this very moment. This was in the 2000s when music videos were all relying on green screens and hideous CG, but this might be some of the worst I've ever seen. Arnold is definitely not on a set, and that motorcycle is not moving. Whee! Now that is some good 2000s music video garbage, complete with the most literal on-screen interpretation of lyrics I've ever seen.
Found a book of matches. Come you hang the phone up and I'll walk in.
Featuring a bonus Matt LeBlanc with a goatee. Wait, how did I end up talking about music? This is gimmick infringement. So, is Batman and Robin still as bad as we all remember? I mean, it's been covered to death over the past 26 years. And yes, this movie is 26 years old now. And for the purposes of Every Arnold Movie Ever, I'm going to try to only cover Mr. Freeze's storyline and Arnold's performance, lest I go insane. Here we go. Now, the logo freezes to ice, indicating that Mr. Freeze is the main villain. And yes, Arnold gets top billing here. He'd better for $25 million. And the only other villain to get top billing in any Batman movie was Jack Nicholson. So Arnold and Jack Nicholson on the same level. Shout out to casting director Molly Finn, who discovered Eddie Furlong while casting T2. And I'm sorry, I said I'd only cover the Mr. Freeze stuff, but a minute and 20 seconds in, and we already have a close-up on bat butts and bat balls. That's how quickly this movie is determined to lose its audience. It's kind of ballsy, to be honest. Not bat ballsy, bad ballsy. And if you thought maybe those codpiece close-ups were an anomaly, Schumacher immediately insults the audience again with the second line of dialogue.
I want a car. Chicks dig the car.
That's a callback to a bad joke they already made in Batman Forever.
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car.
Oh god, we can't get to Mr. Freeze fast enough. But first, we go from 2 minutes of cheese whiz to Alfred, who, in a surprising moment of subtlety, is dying.
Don't wait up, Al.
I'll cancel the pizza.
You know, a lot of people don't catch it the first time around. But there's no time to ruminate on that because we speed off to meet our new villain, Mr. Freeze. He's given zero backstory whatsoever. They are literally like, there's a new villain. And when I say literally, I mean literally.
Batman, a new villain has commandeered the Gotham Museum.
And what a villain he is. Here's Mr. Freeze's first line.
The Iceman cometh.
thus beginning the longest, most painful run of puns in Arnold's career. 95% of his dialogue consists of puns. Just in this scene alone, we've got,
"The Iceman cometh. The condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. There's only one absolute. Everything freezes. You are not sending me to the...
Hang on, wait. Hold on. I cannot just give you a montage of all of his puns. There are plenty of videos out on YouTube for that. It might actually be shorter for me to do something that's not on YouTube, and that's a montage of all his non-pun dialogue, which I've made into a separate video you can watch right over here at this link here, somewhere. And if you didn't click on that link yet, here's his first line of punless dialogue at 6 minutes.
Grab the gem! Kill the heroes! Yes, kill them! Kill them! Yes!
As you can see, he's a complex character with a lot of layers. Now, Mr. Freeze is stealing a diamond for reasons they don't make clear yet, and it's basically the opening to Temple of Doom.
Swing!
But it's just so awkward. Look at how Robin's bike floats through the air. It reminds me of those weird car physics in Last Action Hero. And Freeze's suit is so cumbersome. He doesn't so much catch his freeze gun as just kind of stop its momentum with his arms. Now eventually, Freeze escapes with the diamond in this crazy vehicle that turns into a rocket. There's a toy for that. The rocket goes into freaking space. Reminder that we are 8 minutes into this movie. And even when Batman infiltrates the rocket and drops in, Mr. Freeze can't help but be painfully literal.
I was hoping you'd drop in.
But my favorite line up to this point is when Mr. Freeze says,
"Oh yes."
Like a sicko. Like, chill, man, settle down. Actually, Freeze says yes a lot in this movie.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yeah, yes.
Freeze escapes by flying away. Yeah, there's a toy for that. And when Robin saves Batman, they don't use wings. They surf.
Surf's up!
They surf back to Earth. I guess maybe this is a reference to Batman surfing in the old TV show. I don't know. But since this was 1997, the only logical line they could write for this moment was "Cowabunga!" But if you thought they couldn't get any higher than going to space, this chase continues. But now Freeze is wearing glasses, which means
he wasn't in that costume.
So, Batman and Robin opens with a 15-minute set piece that is a disaster for numerous reasons. One, we don't know anything about Freeze or his motivations other than
a new villain has commandeered the Gotham Museum. 2,
we have no idea why this diamond is important or what Freeze intends to do with it. 3, the action is confusing. Everyone's bouncing and floating and skating and sliding and nothing means anything. 4, Cowabunga! And 5, the movie is so aggressively gaudy and campy from the first minute. It's trying to provoke you. And if you aren't on board, you're in for a very long 2 hours. The one thing it does show, somewhat effectively, is the growing tension between Batman and Robin and how they'll fail if they don't find a way to work together. That will be their major arc through the movie, although there are like 50 other ones piled on top of that. Now next we head over to Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy, where they start to give her an origin story before getting bored and abruptly switching over to another character's origin story, Bane. Now, John Glover plays the mad scientist responsible for creating Bane, and he followed Schumacher's direction to the letter.
I'm afraid you'll have to die.
Bane's given about 30 seconds of lazy backstory before he gets the Steve Rogers treatment and is injected with a super serum, and then they get back to finishing up Poison Ivy's own stupid lazy origin story. And then they realize, oh shit, we forgot to explain Mr. Freeze's backstory. So they cribbed that from the Batman in the Animated Series episode, Heart of Ice. We learn that Freeze was trying to save his wife when he pulls a Joker and falls into a vat of questionable substance, this time a chilly bath. Freeze needs a cryo suit to stay alive, which requires diamonds to run, which would have been helpful information to know at the beginning of the movie. Alfred continues to secretly die.
Alfred?
But has the magical ability to pull it together in front of Bruce and Dick. He tries his best to covertly tell Bruce, very subtly, let him know he's dying.
I trust you, Alfred.
But I shan't be here forever.
But Bruce Wayne, the world's greatest detective, does not pick up on it. Then it's back to Mr. Freeze in his lair. Yeah, there's a toy for that. Freeze is wearing fuzzy bear slippers. And if you're wondering if that's one of Bon Jovi's Cuban cigars, you bet your ass it is. Arnold had them painted white so he could smoke them in the scene. And here, he's trying to make his minions sing for reasons.
Louder, come on, sing, sing, sing!
There's no explanation as to why he's gone completely insane. I guess just because he fell in a vat of something that makes him insane. Freeze's plot is revealed. He's going to hold the city for ransom until he gets billions of dollars for research so he can save his frozen wife, who we'll call Elsa, and who he also happens to be keeping in a back room. So, in 20 minutes, we've established that Batman and Robin are at odds. Alfred is dying. Mr. Freeze is a thing. He's got a plan. Poison Ivy is Catwoman with venomous lips. Bane is also there. Sometimes he even wears a jaunty hat. John Glover is dead. That's a lot. But wait, there's more. They also throw in Barbara, played by Alicia Silverstone. Now, this isn't Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's daughter. Instead, she's Alfred's niece. And you know how I know?
Uncle Alfred. Uncle Alfred. Uncle Alfred. Uncle Alfred. Uncle Alfred.
But juggling 7 characters and their storylines isn't enough for Joel Schumacher and Batman and Robin. And if you act now, we'll throw in a girlfriend for Bruce. It's Elle Macpherson in a total non-starter role and storyline. Poison Ivy then offers Bruce a climate plan to help save the planet, but Bruce rejects it.
No diesel fuel for heat, no coolants to preserve food. Millions of people would die of cold and hunger alone.
It's official. Bruce Wayne is a climate change denier. And we're back to Mr. Freeze moping over his wedding video, which is probably the most unrealistic thing in this movie. No one actually watches their wedding videos. I got married 9 years ago and we still haven't seen ours. Paid good money for that thing too. It could be a blank tape for all I know. And did you know Borat stole one of his catchphrases from Arnold?
Very nice.
At least it's not a pun. Actually.
Very nice.
Back to whatever the fuck is going on here with this dancing ape. By the way, Mr. Freeze isn't the only punslinger in this movie.
My garden needs tending.
Now this scene is terrible, and it includes the absolute worst gag in not just this movie, but any Batman movie.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
And I have an honest question here. Do you think anyone, anywhere on the entire planet has laughed at that bit? I'm talking like a full-on laugh. Like that comes up and he goes, oh, you never leave home without it. And somebody's just like, ah! Yes! They did it! A credit card joke! Freeze busts in with this tiny car. Yes, there's a toy for that, because he can't stand to know other people are making bad jokes in this movie.
All right, everyone, chill.
But this time, Freeze shows a little more depth by tossing in a few non-weather related puns, just to change things up.
Hand over the diamond garden gal, or I'll turn you into mulch. Clever little Clover.
And this insane run of dialogue is capped off by, in my opinion, his most iconic line in this movie.
Cool party.
Also, Bane is there. Freeze drives off with the diamonds and drives down a statue for no reason other than, I guess, it looks cool and it's a big set piece. And this whole thing ends with Batman catching Freeze. But Robin is pissed that Batman overrode his cycle, and Bruce still grappling with learning to let go of some control. Freeze is sent to Arkham Asylum, but they can't lock up his desire to pun.
Allow me to break the ice. My name is Freeze.
We get a brief Predator Running Man reunion between Arnold and Jesse Ventura, whose goatee no doubt inspired Matt LeBlanc a couple years later. Poison Ivy continues wasting celluloid as she finds a lair with this fucking skeleton gang that comes out of nowhere. And we get legitimate cartoon sound effects when Bane beats them up. Hey, remember when the Droogs from Clockwork Orange showed up in Space Jam and everybody was like, what the hell's going on? Because it was a Warner Brothers property and they just dropped in whatever they had. Turns out Batman and Robin did it first. Speaking of random cameos, here's Coolio to remind us this movie was made in 1997. We find out Barbara has been taking part in underground motorcycle races, and I guess that's to make it easier for us to buy that she can become Batgirl. But Before that happens, Barbara goes in hard about how Alfred is trapped in a subservient relationship.
I'm gonna take him away from this dismal life of servitude. This whole master-servant thing, it's really ridiculous. He's subjugated all his life and dreams to someone else.
Whoa, that's too heavy a concept to be in this movie. Get out of here, brutally honest idea. Barbara finally reveals
Alfred's sick.
Oh, you don't say. And Bruce is all like, yeah, duh, I totally knew that.
I can tell.
But I call bullshit. Poison Ivy waltzes right into Freeze's cell, kills the governor of Minnesota, and then busts him out. Also, Bane is there.
A laundry service that delivers. Wow.
Freeze freezes the pipes, no doubt, just so he could say,
always winterize your pipes.
Batman and Robin and Commissioner Gordon are on the case, and oh my god, look at this horrifically photoshopped picture of Poison Ivy and Bane. That looks awful. But he's wearing the jaunty hat. This movie cost $125 million. Batman and Robin get to Elsa before Ivy does, but Freeze reloads with diamonds and puns.
Gelled to perfection.
Ivy pulls the plug on Elsa because she claims she wants Freeze to herself, but I have no idea if she means that in a romantic way. There was also this strange scene earlier where one of Freeze's minions was hitting on him.
I'd weather blizzards just to have you.
So I guess him being a hunk is a thing in this movie? Very strange. Anyway, it does lead to this memorable moment. Freeze finds out that Elsa is dead. He cries one single tear, and then the tear freezes on his cheek. It is a great visual, but it's immediately negated by
their bones will turn to ice.
Ivy gets Freeze to redirect that anger at Batman and the people of Gotham, and then Ivy reveals,
once you have frozen mankind, these babies will overrun the globe.
I'm sorry, what? You know, in a lot of writers' rooms I've been in, there's an expression to describe when you add an idea on top of another idea. So somebody pitches something and then somebody's like, oh, cool, and then you could do this on top of it. But even if that original idea is good, when you add this second idea, it ruins the original idea. And it's called a hat on a hat. I've also heard it called whipped cream on a duck, but the guy who said that was an asshole, so I'm not gonna use that. Anyway, they might as well call it a Batman and Robin, because this entire movie is a hat on a bat on a bird. We already have the freezing of Gotham as the threat. You can't add mutant plants this late in the game. It's too much! Then, proving Barbara right on his deathbed, Alfred is only concerned about what happens to Batman and Robin.
It is a sacred trust of two good men whom I have the honor of calling son.
At the opening of a brand new telescope Bruce Wayne donated, Freeze and Ivy put their plan into action, and Mr. Freeze has one of the best lines of the movie.
First, I will pull Batman's heart from his body.
Not that.
And feel it freeze in my hands.
Nope, not that.
Revenge!
There it is. Man, I love that. Just straight up yelling your motivation for doing something. First, I look up how old Paul Thomas Anderson was when he made Boogie Nights. Then I think about how I didn't even come close to accomplishing something that great at his age, and how I probably won't accomplish something that great even with the time I have left. How much time do I have left? And finally, I think about how when my time does run out, what happens? Nothing? Eternal life? If it's nothing, how is that possible? What's that feel like? It's just not that's it. There's an end. Your brain just, everything stops. You're just gone. Okay, so if it's eternal life or heaven, there's no end. How is that possible? You just go forever? There's no ending? There has to be some sort of ending. But then what is the ending? Then it's just blackness? My brain cannot comprehend. Existential dread. Meanwhile, Barbara is trying to access Alfred's CD file by guessing the password. She's super frustrated because she's tried every possible option, like Wayne and Alfred and England. Eventually, she cracks this brainbuster of a password because it's right next to the computer and reveals a bunch of bat plans. Ivy and Freeze's plan starts to get derailed when Batgirl shows up.
You're about to become compost.
And Ivy randomly gets eaten by her own flower.
Curses!
A flower she herself emerged from moments earlier. What? Then Freeze takes over the observatory, and I'm starting to feel relieved at this point because A, the movie is almost over, and B, I don't think there are any ice puns left to make.
Let's kick some ice.
Fuck. Part of me is very angry that they keep doing this, and part of me is very impressed. Here we get a new Batmobile, Robin gets a new vehicle, so does Batgirl, and they get nice new outfits, and yes, of course, there are toys for that. Now they confront Freeze, and he has one last trick. He detonates a series of bombs, causing the observatory to explode. The only way to save Gotham is to reposition these satellites, which Barbara can do.
Watch and learn, little boy.
You know, Barbara, the computer genius who could barely crack Alfred's 3-letter password that was written right next to his computer. Freeze is given a moment of redemption from Batman here.
She's still frozen, alive, waiting for you to find a cure.
Which leads to Arnold's one very tiny moment where he almost resembles a normal human being.
Will you help me, Doctor?
Ivy ends up insane in Arkham, and Freeze pays her a visit for a little payback.
Surprise.
And I think he's the hero now. He even serves as inspiration for another HBO property, Game of Thrones.
Winter has come at last.
The movie ends when Alfred is saved by Freeze's medicine, and Batgirl officially joins the team.
We're going to need a bigger cave.
No, Alfred. No, you're not. Fucking not. Shut it down, buddy. See you in 8 years. Batman and Robin opened #1 at the box office with a promising $42.8 million, the third highest opening of 1997. In fact, it was Arnold's highest opening weekend of all time at that point in his career. Sounds good, right? It is. What's not as good is what happened in week 2. A 63% decline. It dropped to third place behind newcomer Face Off and also Hercules, which rose in its third week. That's because everybody who saw Batman and Robin, myself included, told people to stay away at all costs. By its third week, it was washed out by Men in Black, and by week 6, it was out of the top 10 altogether. It only made $107 million in the US and $131 internationally for a total of $238. Bit of a profit, but the worst gross for a Batman movie. Siskel and Ebert?
The action sequences are overstuffed. They're burdened by wall-to-wall music. The joking is all below the belt. George Clooney is a good-looking bore in his role, and boring is the last word I would have expected to use so often in describing such a high-powered and, again, well-produced but overproduced Batman movie.
It's like there's a pinball machine with all 5 balls on the machine at the same time. These villains are not really up there with Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, Tommy Lee Jones.
Sadly, this was the last Arnold movie Siskel got to review. He died in February 1999, and he was such a great film critic. His chemistry with Roger Ebert just can never be replicated. And I mean, I grew up watching those two guys talk about movies. It's part of the reason why I love talking about movies as well. And it's been a fun journey watching Siskel's evolution from not really buying into Arnold's shtick at first to slowly being won over by his charisma over the years. I'll keep using Ebert clips as we continue this, but I wanted to recognize the great Gene Siskel. Actually, Siskel and Ebert were incredibly kind in their review of Batman and Robin compared to other critics. It sits at a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. Batman and Robin instantly became a joke, like within the first week it came out. So much so that George Clooney apologizes for it every time it's brought up.
I always apologize for Batman.
Joel Schumacher also apologized.
If I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize. My intention was just to entertain them.
As did Akiva Goldsman, the screenwriter. You know who didn't apologize?
I don't regret it at all. I felt that the character was interesting, and 2 movies before that one, Joel Schumacher was at his height. So the decision-making process was not off.
So, for $25 million, you won't get Arnold to shave his head, but you will prevent him from bad-mouthing your movie. You know, for Clooney, he's having a little fun at his own expense and trying to minimize the damage done to his reputation by being part of the movie that killed the franchise. But like, Clooney's not a bad Batman, he's just in a bad Batman movie. He also had way more at stake than Arnold, coming from TV and still starring on ER, so he's trying to establish himself as a film star. Arnold already had some pretty silly roles up to this point and was known as a punslinger. Plus, this was his first supporting role in about 12 years. And it's hard to know how much this damaged his reputation because there's more to the story. Behind the scenes, as they were making this movie, Arnold found out he needed heart surgery. He scheduled it immediately after the filming of Batman and Robin and tried to keep it a secret, like from everybody, including his wife, which maybe explains quite a bit about their relationship. When word got out, studios were suddenly hesitant to cast him. Arnold had several projects in the pipeline. I Am Legend, With Wings as Eagles, Terminator 3, but all of those went away after his surgery. He says studios were reluctant to insure him in an action movie, which is possible, or was it due to his performance in Batman and Robin? I saw Batman and Robin opening night with a bunch of my friends. It's my senior year of high school, and despite my love for Arnold, I left this movie angry. I was absolutely livid. I felt so insulted by the tone and the jokes. It is one of my top 5 worst theatrical experiences, just below Little Nicky, The Crow 2, Spawn, and maybe Rise of Skywalker. As an 18-year-old, at that time, I had no time for its campy bullshit. I was discovering indie films. This was the era of Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Richard Linklater and Jon Favreau. I was watching Taxi Driver and The Godfather for the first time. And a big old cartoon of Batman and Robin was like the antithesis of what I considered cool at the time. Seeing it today for the first time in probably 20 years, time has not improved the quality of this movie. It's still frozen dog shit. Bruce Wayne / Batman is a blank slate hero with none of the qualities that make Batman interesting. Robin is overly whiny. Batgirl is paper thin and feels like a studio mandate to add girl power. Uma Thurman, she's actually a joy to watch, but Bane should have just been John Glover playing a mutated plant creature created by Ivy, which would have at least set up her plan to populate the world with mutant plants. And then there's Arnold as Mr. Freeze. And this is not a character. It's a sentient meme generator. Here's the thing. Puns are fine. Puns can be great. Arnold's puns served him well in his career because they acted as a surprise release of tension during moments of intense violence. That's why they work. But when every line is a pun, none of the lines are a surprise, and there's never an opportunity to build any tension. Arnold's tried and true formula is reversed here. Action, occasionally punctuated by a one-liner, has become one-liners interrupted by action. It forces him into unflattering self-parody. But unlike Last Action Hero or True Lies, this isn't a comment on his persona, it's an exploitation of it. Most of his puns and one-liners here aren't even in response to anything other than the desire to pile on more puns. It's not like Batman's even setting him up with a line. A lot of times Freeze is just monologuing and dropping ice puns to no one in particular. He just says whatever seems vaguely related to the situation at hand. Arnold's best one-liners are born out of the situation he's in. I'll be back. Your luggage. I lied. Let off some steam. Great lines that work because they had a proper setup. Here it's just, he's at a party, so he says, cool party. And Mr. Freeze, the character, suffers for it. He's maniacal, but it's not justified. His sole motivation is to save his wife, but somehow that gets extrapolated into him wanting to freeze Gotham without any true logical reason. We don't take steps to get there. It's just because he's a villain. I wish we got a version of Arnold as Mr. Freeze where he brought more humanity to the role and made himself a sympathetic but tragic figure. But instead, our guy got paid $25 million and couldn't even be bothered to shave his head. All right, let's get to the stats. Acting chops, 3. It's 95% puns, and every line is so over the top. It's just ridiculous. He's on camera a total of 22 minutes, costing Warner Brothers a cool $1,136,363 per minute. Kill count, hard to say because it's kind of a cartoon, but we're going to say 8 for a clean total of 500. Catchphrase, I gave it away earlier, and also it's been on my body for the last 20 minutes, but it's definitely cool party. And here are the Every Arnold Movie Ever rankings. Got your cameos and T2 3D. Number 23, Hercules in New York. Number 22, The Villain. Number 21, Red Sonja. Number 20, Stay Hungry. Number 19, Batman and Robin. Number 18, Red Heat. Number 17, Raw Deal. Number 16, Junior. And the top 15 remain unchanged. Next up, Arnold tries to tap into the Y2K panic by starring in his first horror movie and ends up horribly miscast as his string of underperformers continues in the appropriately titled End of Days. See you then.